The hills of Boone County, West Virginia, have always held their secrets. They're ancient, covered in thick forests of oak and hickory. Back in 1912, these hills were even more remote than they are today. Dirt roads, often washed out by rain, were the only way in or out. The small town of Madison was a hub of activity, but just a few miles outside its limits, the wilderness took over completely. It was a place where a person could disappear, a place where neighbors were few and far between. And it was here, on a lonely, wooded hillside, that our story begins. A story about a man with a plan, a strange house, and a mystery that lingers even now, more than a century later. It was a quiet place, the kind of place where the loudest sounds were the wind in the trees and the call of a distant bird. For most folks in Boone County, life was simple. It revolved around family, church, and the hard work of farming or mining. Strangers were noticed, newcomers were talked about. So when a man from out of town bought a piece of land on that isolated slope, people wondered, what did he want with that patch of unforgiving terrain? Why would anyone choose to build a life so far from everyone else? The land itself was unremarkable, just acres of trees and rock, with a small clearing that offered a view of the valley below. The year was 1912. America was on the cusp of great change. Cities were growing, technology was advancing. But in rural West Virginia, time seemed to move a little slower. The people there were practical and down to earth. They understood the land because they had lived on it for generations. They knew its rhythms, its dangers, and its rewards. They were wary of things they didn't understand. And the man who came to live on that hillside was something they could not understand. He was an outsider with money and an idea that he kept entirely to himself, locked away behind the walls of the house he was about to build. Life in the hollows was predictable. Neighbors might not see each other for weeks, but they knew each other's business. They knew who was sick, who was getting married, and who had a good harvest. News traveled on foot or by horse, passed along at the general store in Madison. So when Virgil Ashmont arrived, he became a topic of conversation. He was a puzzle, a man who didn't fit the mold of a farmer, a miner, or a timberman. He was something else entirely. And the mystery of what he was doing up on that hill would only deepen with each passing month, building toward an ending that no one could have ever predicted. So who was this man? His name was Virgil Ashmont. According to the deed filed at the Boone County Courthouse, he was from somewhere back east, maybe Philadelphia or perhaps Boston. The records, honestly, weren't entirely clear. He was in his late 40s. Folks described him as a man of medium height, with a quiet demeanor and a serious expression. He dressed well, in clothes that looked out of place against the rugged West Virginia landscape. He had money, that much was clear. He paid for the land in cash, a significant sum for a plot that many locals considered nearly worthless. A plot with no good pasture and no signs of coal. Virgil Ashmont wasn't a man for small talk. When he came to town, he conducted his business and then he left. He bought the land from an old farmer who was happy to be rid of it. The transaction was quick and professional. Ashmont didn't haggle over the price. He simply paid what was asked. He told the county clerk that he was seeking peace and quiet. He wanted to build a small home where he could live out his days in solitude. It was a simple explanation, an explanation that on the surface seemed to make sense. After all, the world was becoming a noisy, crowded place. Who couldn't understand the desire for a little bit of peace? But there were whispers. Ashmont wasn't a writer or an artist or a man recovering from some illness. At least, he never said he was. He offered no details about his past life, no stories about a family or a former profession. He was a blank slate, a man without a history, or at least one he was willing to share. This lack of a backstory was unusual. In a community where family names and personal histories were everything, Ashmont's silence was conspicuous. It made people curious. It made them suspicious. What was he hiding? What reason could a man have for wanting to be so completely alone? He hired a local crew to clear a larger space on the property and build a simple, 2-story house. He oversaw the work himself, watching every board that was nailed into place. He was particular. He wanted the house built to his exact specifications. The builders noted that he seemed intelligent and knew a surprising amount about construction. He was polite but distant. He paid them well and on time, but he never invited them to share a meal or a conversation. Once the basic structure was complete, he dismissed the crew. The rest of the work, he said, he would finish himself. And it was then that the real mystery of Virgil Ashmont began to take shape. For a time, things were quiet on the hill. Virgil Ashmont lived alone in his new house. His nearest neighbors, the Miller family, lived about a mile down the winding dirt road. They would see him occasionally, walking along the road or tending to a small garden he had planted. He would offer a polite nod, but never stop to chat. Mrs. Miller once tried to bring him a freshly baked pie as a welcoming gesture. She said he thanked her, but seemed uncomfortable, almost agitated, by the visit. He did not invite her inside. She left with the feeling that she had disturbed him. After that, the neighbors kept their distance. Then the delivery started. Once a month, a wagon would make the difficult journey up the hill to Ashmont's property. It came from the train station in Madison. The wagon was always loaded with heavy wooden crates. The man who drove the wagon, a fellow named Jebediah, said the crates were incredibly heavy. He never knew what was inside them. Ashmont was always there to meet him. He would pay in cash and insist on unloading the crates himself, using a system of ropes and levers he had rigged up. He refused all offers of help. Jebediah said Ashmont seemed almost desperate to get the crates inside the house, away from prying eyes. The contents of those crates became the subject of much speculation in Madison. What could a man living alone in the woods possibly need that came in so many heavy boxes? Some guessed it was books. Maybe he was a scholar building a vast library. Others thought it might be machinery. Perhaps he was an inventor, working on some secret project. The theories grew more elaborate with each delivery, but no one knew for sure. Ashmont kept to himself, and the secrets of his house remained locked inside. The mystery only deepened when he hired a local carpenter for a very specific and very strange job. The carpenter's name was Silas Drummond. Ashmont hired him for a single task. He was to work inside the house, in one specific room upstairs. Drummond later told people that Ashmont was very clear about the rules. He was only to work in that one room. He was not to ask any questions, and he was not to speak of what he was building to anyone. Drummond, needing the work, agreed. He worked for 2 weeks, and what he described later only added another layer to the enigma of Virgil Ashmont. The project was unlike anything he had ever been asked to build before. It made no sense, but the pay was good, and so he did the work, just as he was told. The room Silas Drummond worked on was the largest room in the house. It was the entire second floor. Ashmont had designed the house with no dividing walls upstairs, creating one long open space. There were windows on 3 sides, offering a panoramic view of the surrounding woods and the valley below. It was in this room that the mystery of Virgil Ashmont was concentrated. Drummond was instructed to reinforce the ceiling joists until they were exceptionally strong, far stronger than would be needed for a normal house. Ashmont oversaw the work carefully, checking every beam and every nail. He was obsessed with the strength of that ceiling. Once the ceiling was reinforced, Ashmont had Drummond install a complex system of pulleys and ropes. It was a heavy-duty block and tackle, the kind you might see on a ship or in a large warehouse. It was anchored directly to the newly strengthened beams in the center of the room. A thick rope ran through the pulleys, dangling down towards the floor. It was a strange piece of equipment to have inside a house. Drummond couldn't imagine what it could be for. When he asked, Ashmont simply replied, "It is for a project." He offered no further explanation. The request was bizarre, but Ashmont's payment was prompt, so Drummond held his tongue. But the pulley system wasn't the only strange thing. While Drummond worked, he noticed Ashmont's other activities. The crates that had been delivered were now in the upstairs room, pried open. They were filled with photographs, thousands and thousands of them. Pictures of places Ashmont had presumably never been. Great cities, towering mountains, vast oceans, deserts, jungles. He spent his days meticulously sorting these images, pinning them to the walls in careful arrangements. The walls were becoming a collage of the entire world. It was an obsession. Drummond said Ashmont would sometimes just stand in the middle of the room, staring at the pictures for hours. Drummond finished his work on the pulley system and was paid. He left the house on the hill feeling deeply unsettled. He had a story to tell, but he had promised to keep it to himself. He described Ashmont's behavior as focused but erratic. Some days, Ashmont was energetic, working tirelessly on his photo collection. Other days, he seemed lost in thought, quiet and melancholy. He rarely ate, he rarely slept. He was a man consumed by his project. A project that involved a reinforced ceiling, a heavy-duty pulley, and thousands of pictures of the outside world. A world he had, it seemed, gone to great lengths to leave behind. As the months of 1913 wore on, the few people who had contact with Virgil Ashmont noticed a change in him. His already rare trips into Madison became even less frequent. When he was seen, he looked different. He had lost weight. His well-kept clothes were now often disheveled. The man who drove the delivery wagon, Jebediah, said that Ashmont seemed more agitated with each visit. He was impatient. He was distracted. His eyes, Jebediah said, had a haunted look. He was no longer just a private man. He was a man who seemed to be wrestling with something that was wearing him down, day by day. The deliveries of crates stopped, but a new kind of delivery began. Ashmont started ordering large quantities of books, not novels or history books, but technical manuals, books on engineering, books on physics, books on human anatomy and the principles of flight. The postmaster in Madison was puzzled. What did a recluse living in the woods need with such advanced scientific texts? It didn't fit with the idea of a man seeking a simple, quiet life. It seemed that whatever project Ashmont was working on, it was entering a new, more complicated phase, a phase that required serious academic study. His neighbor, Mr. Miller, had one last memorable encounter with him in the late autumn of 1913. Miller was hunting on the edge of his property when he saw Ashmont standing in the clearing near his house. He was just staring up at the sky. Miller called out a greeting. Ashmont turned, and for the first time, he seemed eager to talk. He asked Miller a strange question. "Do you ever feel," Ashmont said, "that you are tied to the ground? That your whole life is spent looking up at a place you can never reach?" Miller didn't know what to say. Ashmont just smiled a sad smile, turned, and went back inside his house. That was the last time anyone in Boone County reported seeing Virgil Ashmont alive. After that conversation, he vanished. The mail began to pile up at the post office in Madison. A delivery of groceries that he had ordered was left on his porch untouched. At first, no one thought much of it. Ashmont was a man who kept to himself. Maybe he had gone on a trip, but weeks turned into a month. Winter was approaching. The people in town started to worry. It was one thing to be a recluse, it was another thing to disappear completely. Something was wrong on that lonely hill. By December of 1913, concern had grown into genuine alarm. The postmaster contacted the Boone County Sheriff, a man named Elias Hatfield. The sheriff was a practical man, not given to flights of fancy. He had heard the stories about the strange man on the hill, but had paid them little mind. Now, with Ashmont missing for over a month, he decided it was time to investigate. He and his deputy, a young man named Ben Carter, rode their horses up the muddy, frozen road to Ashmont's property. The air was cold and still. A light dusting of snow covered the ground. The house stood silent against the gray winter sky. As they approached, they could see the house was closed up tight. The curtains were all drawn. The groceries that had been delivered weeks before were still on the porch, frozen and spoiled. A stack of newspapers lay yellowing by the door. The sheriff knocked loudly. There was no answer. He called out Ashmont's name. Only the echo of his own voice came back. They walked around the perimeter of the house, peering into the windows, but it was too dark to see much. The front door was locked. The back door was locked, too. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken windows. The house was sealed like a tomb. Sheriff Hatfield made the decision to force entry. He was worried Ashmont might be sick or injured inside. With his shoulder, he broke open the back door. The inside of the house was cold and musty. The downstairs was sparsely furnished but tidy. There was a kitchen with a clean stove, a small sitting room with a single chair and a table, and a bedroom with a neatly made bed. Everything was in order. It was as if the owner had just stepped out for a moment, but there was a strange feeling in the air, a feeling of abandonment. It was too quiet, too still. The sheriff and his deputy searched the ground floor thoroughly. They found nothing. No note, no clues to explain Ashmont's absence, no signs of foul play. Then, they noticed the staircase leading to the second floor. The door at the bottom of the stairs was closed. The deputy, Ben Carter, reached for the knob. He turned it. It was unlocked. As he pushed the door open, a draft of cold air rushed down the stairs. It carried with it a faint, peculiar smell, a mix of paper, dust, and something else they couldn't quite identify. They drew their lanterns and started up the stairs into the heart of Virgil Ashmont's mystery. What they found in that upstairs room stopped both men in their tracks. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The entire, vast space was a testament to one man's all-consuming obsession. The walls, from floor to ceiling, were covered in thousands of photographs of landscapes from all over the world. Pictures of soaring mountain peaks, vast oceans, and sprawling cities. It was as if Ashmont had been trying to bring the entire world into this single room. In the center of the floor, directly beneath the heavy-duty pulley system, sat a single, sturdy wooden chair. It was bolted to the floorboards. Attached to the chair were several thick leather straps, like those on a harness. And hanging from the pulley above was the end of the thick rope. It was attached to the harness on the chair. The sheriff and his deputy stared at the strange contraption. It was a machine. But what was it for? What could Virgil Ashmont have been doing in this room, strapped into a chair, surrounded by pictures of the world? On a small table next to the chair, they found a journal. Its pages were filled with Ashmont's neat handwriting. There were complex calculations, drawings of wings, and notes on wind currents and aerodynamics. The journal entries became more frantic toward the end. Ashmont wrote about the tyranny of gravity. He wrote about the longing of the soul to fly. His final entry was dated the day before his neighbor saw him staring at the sky. It was short and cryptic. It read, "The preparations are complete. The body is a cage, but the mind has wings. Tonight, I will see the world not as it is, but as it can be. Tonight, I travel." There was no other explanation. Virgil Ashmont was gone. His body was never found. The house was empty. All that was left was the strange machine and his mysterious final words. So, what happened to Virgil Ashmont? Did he simply walk away from his life, leaving behind a bizarre puzzle for others to solve? Or did something else happen in that room? The sheriff's official report listed him as a missing person, but the people of Boone County had their own theories. Some said he had built a flying machine and crashed in the dense woods. Others whispered that he had found a way to leave his body behind, to travel to the places in his photographs through the power of his mind. No one knows for sure. The house is long gone now, but the story remains. The story of a man who came to the hills for solitude and left behind an enduring and unsolved question.